Quickie. Hello and thanks for joining. I got myself a DI box for the first time. This is a very affordable Pyle Pro DI box. It's called the DI PDC Dual Direct Box PDC22. So you get the PDC21 and the PDC22, and this one basically is just 2 inputs and 2 outputs. So it's basically 2 DI boxes in one. So anyway, I didn't know much about DI boxes except obviously obvious kind of uses. So I've been a little bit surprised at some of the things that they can do. So number one, let's talk about this thing itself. This thing is £13 on Amazon. Most DI boxes come in at 50 plus. It's got everything that the DI boxes have. You have got an input and a parallel out. You've got the attenuator from 0, 20 to 40 decibels, and you've got your ground lift buttons. Okay, it clearly indicates the circuitry involved and what to do. It comes with a really shitty little manual, but the shitty little manual tells you exactly how to use it, and it does so quite clearly, including wiring diagrams for certain scenarios. So what can I tell you about this thing? It feels solid enough. Again, this is £13. If this thing breaks, you buy a new one. I don't believe for a minute that this thing is going to break. It is fairly solidly built. But more importantly, I don't just buy cheap stuff for the sake of it. I do first do my homework, and this has got really good reviews, both from durability as well as sound quality. Now, there's nothing to DI boxes really to kind of say, oh, this one sounds better than this one and all that kind of shit, because it's really just basic flipping changing a signal from high impedance to low impedance in most cases, and in this case it also does the attenuation, which means you can actually put high powered amps through it and change that signal to the other end, which then becomes, so you can put not high voltage, but I mean a speaker output is pretty high compared to headphones or anything like that. You can put that in here, put the impedance down to 20, 40 depending on what you require, and you out it, and you can get that out into a desk. So it comes into play with some interesting scenarios. So main thing to use this for is usually kind of bass guitars. Bass guitars are hard to mic up. The low frequencies, especially mic them up well, especially at in live situations. So the whole idea is that you line it out and you use one of these guys. Now a lot of bass amps and a lot of amps nowadays have a line out anyway, and they're usually pretty good. That line out goes straight into the mixing desk and gives the sound guy a much easier kind of day than it is to try and mic everything up. The way that these DI boxes, however, work is you can put them in between. So theoretically, like in this case, you put the guitar in straight into the DI, you parallel it out back into the amp, so the amp gets a proper feed, so the amp behind you live on stage is working and it's loud and you can interact with it. And then you've got the balanced out, which is a direct feed then from your bass guitar, which goes into the desk. Now the interesting thing about this is that because of the way the inputs work, you have all your pedals in front of it as well. Which brings me to the next reason I tried to buy this, or I bought this and wanted to use it for. I made a video quite a while back which was about using the kind of smaller guitar interfaces and how there's a huge amount of buzz in them, especially when you use them for amp simulations like Amplitube and bias and all these kind of things. And usually that hum and those buzzes are really just noises introduced into the system because of ground loops or bad wiring or any kind of scenarios where a lot of things are plugged into the same plug points, and it creates all these kind of ground issues. A lot of these things are easily solved by ground lifts or hum destroyers and things like that. In the video that I made was actually there to show you how to get rid of that hum by first passing this signal from your guitar through something that is properly grounded, like a good amp. Okay, so what I used a small line 6 amp. I put the everything into the front of the amp, and then use the amp headphones out and put that into the guitar interface, which got rid of all the, because it's a properly grounded unit, near enough all the noises were gone. So theory here is that you use a proper DI box, it should be even better at it, and lo and behold, yes it is. If you put your guitar, even all your pedals, in front of this, and you run the signal dry in here and out from the XLR, which is now a phase cancelled or a balanced signal, put that into your guitar interface, and I kid you not, there is just no noise in the signal. So for £13, realistically, you can solve all your humming and buzzing and noise problems on your kind of desktop guitar interfaces, USB FireWire ones that are USB powered. The reason you've got these ground issues is because your laptop is grounded. Your USB interface probably isn't properly grounded, somehow grounded with your laptop and the USB whatever. Then you've got on the same plug point or on the same extension or a distributor, you will then have your amp, or you will have your pedals and your pedal power and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the ground loops happen. They're all on the same circuit, and that's why the noising and the humming is such an issue when it comes to your little home studio. So this is a very common problem, and you get lots of little gadgets, hum destroyers and all that, and the way they work, you can check it up yourself. They're actually very simple operation. There's not a lot of stuff that goes in it. It is really just clever electronics, and this one has solved mine even better than the amp has. So do not be fooled by DIs. They don't have to be expensive. They have a very simple, clear operation that they do. The electronics and the components inside them are very, very basic. They do not have to cost an arm and a leg, as long as they can take a bit of punishment because they get thrown around, as long as they don't have any issues inside of them, which you will immediately know once you get them. If there's any sort of buzzing or humming coming from the unit, you can send it straight back and get a new one, because you probably just got a dud. So don't be fooled by especially something as simple as a DI box, that it has to be ridiculously expensive. So a couple of things about the PDC. One of the operations that they explain very clearly is how to use this as a typical DI box. Now these DI boxes are commonplace in live gigs, but they nowadays, with the introduction of reamping, guitar signals in the mixing process, recording dry signals as well as mic'd up signals from the amp, these DI boxes are now becoming quite commonplace in the studio as well. Their ability to cancel out noise and making unbalanced to balanced signals are also very useful in the studio. So scenario one is to actually have this thing plug in your guitar, your effects, everything straight into it. Put the parallel output back into the amp, so you've got your backline working behind you, but you've got a clear signal that goes straight to the decks. Now, if you want the amp and all that sound to come through as well, you can take the speaker out and put it in here. Put the attenuator down so that you don't blow up the desk, and that line also goes out from balanced output into the desk. That is, so these are very, very interesting scenarios. Now it can also you can also use it the other way around. So you can also have a change a balanced into an unbalanced, but pretty much just using the opposite way. You have your putting your balanced here and your unbalanced out. You can also use it as a crude kind of splitter, if you like, or combining two signals into one. So I'm using this now. I like to have the amp going, and I like to have a direct signal into the guitar interface or the audio interface. So I do actually put all my effects straight in here and return one to the amp and put the XLR out into the guitar interface. That way, one of the things I always feel is ridiculously missing from all this dry signaling is that the guitar recording becomes this clinical thing where you've got no noise, you've got no feedback, it's just surgical, everything about it. if you have the amp next to you, but that amp is not recorded, everything is dry recorded, you can still have your amp give you feedback, give you all that ability to play and feel and hear the sound while you're playing for your recording, but the dry signal is still going in, so you can still reamp it and you still get that feedback sound and all of it that the amp produced, but you can still reamp everything to or put it through an amp modeler. So that gives you the best of all worlds. You can also record both signals, and you can blend them, or you can choose which one is best. So it gives you the options, and it takes nothing. It takes, kid you not, £13. So what is that? Maybe $16–17. So this was definitely a worthwhile buy. You obviously get different kinds of DI boxes. You get the one from Behringer, which is about £100, which has 8 inputs. You know, that solves, you know, if you're a live audio engineer, you know, you can run 8 inputs at the same time. These things really do solve quite a few problems. Magical little wizardry is going on here. So I would suggest you pick one up. Pyle Pro do some, Behringer do some, and some are £200. I just don't understand. They do exactly the same thing. They might be build quality overkill. I don't know. Sometimes I worry how people get to certain prices. I don't know. So this thing works well. I hope in the future I will have some. Actually, let me plug it right now. I'm gonna do some amp modeling demos from Igniter and Poland, and some of the cab modeling as well, which this is perfect for. The signal is clean. It's just genius. You can mix things around. You can have run all your effects through your pedals, so you get a different kind of warmer sound instead of using the digital pedals or through your amp sims. I find that the real pedals still sound a little bit better, but the amps themselves and the cam simulation on the other hand sounds better again on the other side. So you can play around with that stuff and you can have more fun than you ever imagined. Plus you've got all these additional options, you've got all these amps at your fingertips that you can play with. So this was a short story that went really long. I really just wanted to talk about the DI-Box. I just got it. I've used it. It is great. It is kind of pointless to do a demo of this, a sound demo, because they either sound good, i.e. there's no noise in them, or they're noisy and you can chuck them in the bin or send them back to where you bought them from. Because that's the way they work is just simple electronics. There's nothing special about them. They work or they don't work. End of story. So there's no need to go and buy anything ridiculously expensive. Get yourself something that works. If it doesn't, send it back. Now I just wanted to give a quick overview of its specs, and I thought this was quite interesting. The frequency response, 3 to 35 kilohertz. So that goes way over any kind of interface or microphone or anything like that anyway. Again, I mean, if you look at these figures, there is nothing here that suggests that this isn't good enough for any application that you might require. So anyway, here we go again. Not to try and sell cheap shit from China, but trying to save you some money and not be fooled by people who try and take the piss. Anyway, thanks for watching. All the best. Take care.